Good afternoon, Helen. Thank you for joining us. Please could you introduce who you are in the company and what your company does? So we know and I've spoken to the students about you, but we'd like that as part of our video, if that's okay.
Yes, certainly. My name's Helen Bruce and I'm a director in a company called Dyke Yaxley Limited, and we're a firm of chartered accountants in Shropshire, Shrewsbury and Telford.
Okay, and what does that mean? What does your company actually offer to the public? What's your product or service, please?
Right, we offer generally business services, all connected with accountancy and taxation. So that will include things like preparing accounts for various businesses, both limited companies, partnerships and sole traders, helping them work out their tax and completing any returns and official forms they need to, help them with their bookkeeping sometimes so they know how to record their sales and their expenses. We also give advice on how to expand their businesses, how they can make more profit, or perhaps they want to plan for their retirement. A whole range of things to a whole businesses in almost any sector and any size.
So when you say you might actually look at giving them advice on how to expand the business, what, just in terms of what you look at, because for this course our students are looking at, if I just rattle through some of the finance stuff they need to know, they go through revenue, cost of sales, gross profits, expenses, and then net profit. They then have to look at, don't worry year 10s, I'm doing this for Helen's benefit, not yours at the moment. It's current ratio, liquid capital ratio. They do all those calculations so that they can then make an financial analysis on performance, which you've now said that's what you do. I was wondering if you could actually explain that in action, please.
Well, obviously, we'd look at, when we look at a business with the client, we'd look, first of all, obviously, their gross profit is very important, because if you're not making a gross profit, you've nothing to cover your ordinary overheads, your overheads being your day-to-day running costs that are going to be there whether you sell anything or not, like your rent of your property and that sort of thing. And when we look at a business, one wants to make sure it's profitable so it can cover all its costs and make sufficient so that the owners can have some money out of it, otherwise they'd be working for nothing. If they're wanting to expand their business, then obviously you look at things like, can they increase their market? Can they increase their sales? Is their balance sheet strong enough? So you mentioned there, I think, looking at different ratios. So if you're looking at your ratios on your on your balance sheet, you're looking at, are you already borrowing too much money, or could you borrow more money? Have you got, what assets have you got, and what's the link between the two, and making sure that that looks healthy, because a bank won't lend you money if you've already got borrowing too much or you've no security. So we look at all those different aspects to help the plan.
And what do you mean by security, so that we all know?
Security would be something like, if you were borrowing a substantial amount of money, the bank wants to know that its money's safe. They don't like taking risks. So if you perhaps own a property, they might say, can they take a charge on that? Or you might know that more as a mortgage. The banks will sometimes talk about charges, but it's the same as a mortgage. They basically, if you don't pay them back, then they could take that property instead of you paying the loan. Sometimes for a limited company, they may ask the director for a personal guarantee against a loan, and that would give them some security. Or other common types of borrowing might be hire purchase, where you're borrowing against to buy a car or a vehicle. So again, if you didn't keep up the repayments, they might take that vehicle back because they've got that as security. Okie
doke, thank you. I just picking up when you introduced Dyke Yaxley, you said limited. Now we have been covering limited companies. We've covered both private and public in our lessons. Sorry for the delay. I'm actually clicking enter, letting people in as well. Could you please explain which one Dyke Yaxley is and what that means for your company as well?
Right. We're a private limited company, which means we don't sell any shares on the stock market, which is what public limited companies do. But we still have to file accounts at Companies House, so there's an element of our business that is on public record, but far less information than a public limited company. The public limited companies obviously have to publish reports about all sorts of things on their activities, very in depth, whereas a private limited company, if you're a small company, you can file something with Companies House, but very, very minimal, just a balance sheet really. The bigger you are, you might have to file a profit and loss account as well.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was just joining in. Do you think, I'm just making sure if there's any comments, we haven't got any questions yet from the students. That's been our current topic in terms of type of companies. Could we ask where you're based, where Dyke Yaxley actually is, please?
Yeah, we've got two offices. One's in Shrewsbury and one's in Telford on Stafford Park. But our actual customers or clients, as we tend to call them, although the majority are in Telford and Shropshire, we do have clients in Wales, Scotland, all throughout the UK and overseas. In these days, it's easy to have people all over the place because there's so much more digital communication. So you don't our business doesn't necessarily have to be in the same place as our client.
Okay, which then leads me on to sort of the specific questions that we want to ask about how you talk to your customers. Do you ever talk directly to them? Before I ask the question, I just want to clarify for the students' benefit. So Dyke Yaxley doesn't actually offer a product, you're offering service. So in terms of they come to you to help with manage their finance accounts, and they have to pay for the privilege of you sorting that out for them, so that students understand what that is.
Yes, we provide a service. It's professional advice, I suppose, and we help them with everything connected with their business. So it is advice and to a certain extent a service. For example, we may run the payroll for them, or we may actually do the bookkeeping for them. So that would be something we do for them, and they pay a fee for that. So our customers are there for different businesses or individuals who need those services.
Okay, so sometimes you act as actual finance department for a company then as well?
We can do, yes.
Okay, right, hopefully that's got that across for everybody, what they offer, which then leads into my question is, do you ever talk directly to customers about what services they'd like from your business? So in terms of, this, obviously we're leading into market research is where we're going, which is our piece of coursework. So we'd like to explore how you talk to customers and what they say, and that's where we're going. So my first question is about how do you actually ask them directly what they like about your service, or what they like you to offer but you don't currently?
Okay, there's two ways of looking at that. If I first look at it, say a brand new client who comes saying, I think I need some accountancy services, what can you offer? We would then, in normal times, we would hope to have a face-to-face meeting with them. At the moment, we're doing a few like this over Teams, but we would try and meet with them, and we would explain to them all the services we can offer. We'd find out about their business to try and find out what they actually need, and ask them what they'd like, and then we can sort of tailor a service to them and say, would you like this package of services, and this is what the cost would be. Ongoing, when we're then acting for a client, we meet them each year to discuss all their results, and at that meeting we would always try to say, are you happy with the service? Is there anything we did really well? Is there anything we could have done better? Is there anything more you'd like from us? Perhaps their business has changed and they need some extra services. And we find that very useful because, one, we can feed back to our staff if someone says, oh, yes, Tom did a really good job on that and was very helpful. We can feed back, which boosts our staff's morale. Equally, we take it on board if we've done something badly. They say, well, you never wrote to us in time, or, you said you'd ring back and you didn't. We take that very seriously because obviously we don't want many of those responses, but we're human, we make mistakes. And so occasionally you slip up. So you try and make sure you learn from that and don't make that mistake again.
So would you say then you've got where you initialize, where you begin your relationship with one of your customers, your clients, that's more if we sort of suggest that's more of an interview in terms of a market research method, that's more of the one-to-one basis.
Yes.
When they've become your customer, your client, then the way you keep up to date with them is through these annual reviews that you do, the yearly reviews.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So they go year 10, you've got an interviews going on as a method. Could you please, why do you think it's better for you to do things like these individual one-to-one interviews rather than just sending them a survey and say, please fill that in?
Well, a lot of the time they get so much paper, as I think we all do. Surveys can be overlooked. We do use surveys as well from time to time, and we do get a reasonable percentage back. Again, asking the same sort of questions. Has anyone done an excellent job? Any problems? And how do you rate us? And we try to keep a record of how people rate us, whether it's through the one-to-one or through a survey. And if we get a poor rating from someone, a senior director will quite often ring that client up and say, oh, see, you weren't quite happy with that. What can we do? Just in case it might have been a personality clash. Perhaps I didn't get on with someone and they'd be better off working with someone else. So we do use different ways. But generally, I think because a lot of the work we do is quite personal with people, we're dealing with their money, which is quite a sensitive issue for some people. So I think face-to-face works better because of what we're selling. It is more of a personal service in some ways.
Okay, so if we make a point in our right now, year 10s, actually saying there's a method of finding out customer needs which are directly related to the actual purpose of the business there. So they're going for the personal one-to-one approach because of the personal interaction that's needed with the service. So we've got that one. I just want to pick up on something that you said, that you do surveys and you do rating. Can I ask, how do you get the surveys to your clients?
We post them out usually when we've come to the end of a project. So perhaps we're sending their final accounts to them or their tax return. And then we'll include a survey with that. We get our secretarial staff to do that on a random basis. So every day they will pick at random, say 10 of the sets of accounts that are going out. So we can't influence them sending it just to the nice clients. They have to send them at random.
What sorts of questions do you ask on these surveys?
Did anyone do an exceptional job? Is there anything you were unhappy with? Would you like, is there anything further you require from us? Any further services? Would you be willing to recommend us to someone else?
Right.
And if so, have you a name at the moment?
So just going through those questions, when you say, does anyone does an exceptional service? So dipping back into what the students need for their coursework, would you say that is quantitative, that's a closed question, that's a tick box job that they've got to do? Or are you allowing them to write anything?
They can write anything.
Oh, okay, that's fair enough. Because
that's as much to get feedback on how our staff are performing, really. There's probably a more closed question about, are you satisfied with our service, which is a bit more of a closed question.
Okay, yeah,
that's right. Yes or no.
Yes, that's what I was leading to. So that, because one of the things we've got to show is how you use qualitative and quantitative data. So you do cover that in terms of that's the rating question that you ask.
Yeah.
And you've covered that one. And obviously you use the survey as an opportunity for sales generation then as well, to actually for recommendation for new business.
Yes, and when we look at our statistics, the majority of our new business comes by recommendation from existing clients.
So just to spell out the obvious now, because obviously we're recording and I'm wanting to see all those lovely faces there, but I can't at the moment. Because could perhaps all the new clients coming in through personal recommendations links back to why you would do the personal interviews about how satisfied were you because of your personal survey? Is there a little bit of a theme going across there, Helen?
Yes, I think so. I mean, there are firms of accountants out there who do much, you can do it all online, and it's very automated, and that's sort of like cheap and cheerful, but there's no personal interaction. We like to feel we're with a client for the life of their business, so it's not just one day, just selling them a product one day and that's it. You might not see them again. We look after them year after year after year, and very often it will be sort of parents run a business, then they hand it down to their children. We still act for them. If I retire, one of my younger colleagues will take over. So it's a bit of a family sort of feeling. And so, yes, the personal side does run through how we market and expand as well.
So that sort of jumps a few questions, but as we're discussing it right now, what you talked about, because you've got an office in Telford and in Shrewsbury, then you've got the big Birmingham and London offices, who are sort of they're massive firm of accountants who can churn and burn through lots of cases. So that then leads to sort of how do you compare yourself to your competitors, and who are your competitors?
Right. On the whole, we don't compare ourselves to what we generally call the big 4 or 6 who would have offices in Birmingham, London, Manchester, the names that your students might have heard of in newspapers like.
They probably won't.
Well, yeah.
Could you share the names then, please?
EY, PwC, Deloitte. They tend to be deal with multinational businesses. There will be large firms in Birmingham who occasionally try to come onto our territory, but where we think we win is they will send a junior out to do the job, whereas locally they'd get a director or a senior person, so they get better quality. But our real competitors are similar sized firms locally. So within Telford and Shropshire, that's Whittingham Riddell, Baldwin's, in Telford, Phillips and Co. And similar types of business to ourselves, similar sizes. And again, they've got long-standing relationships with, as probably aware, a lot of businesses in the local area are family-run companies. And so they've dealt with the families for a lot of time. So they're our main competition.
How do you keep tabs on what they're doing if they suddenly start doing something different? It's because if the big companies, you used the phrase coming onto your territory, but your actual competition you mentioned are more local companies like yourself. How do you keep tabs on what they do so they're not encroaching your sale, your revenue?
Yeah, it'll be a combination of keeping an eye on what they're putting in the press. If you suddenly realise someone's putting a whole load of free seminars on, for example, that might be saying, oh, are we doing that? Should we be doing that? Noticing whether they're attending different networking events, or in normal times, say in Shropshire, big agricultural county, so we'd perhaps go to the county shows, make sure our face is known. Also, we're very lucky in Telford and Shropshire, a lot of people know each other, so there's a lot of, oh, well, my mate works for so-and-so, and you find out a bit through that way. So you just keep your eyes and ears open, and equally, clients will say, sometimes someone will go to our competitors for a quote and they'll come to us and say, oh, well, they said they'd do it for, you know, £500 less than you. So we would then try to inquire as to what they're actually offering, and, you know, are they just trying to what we call lowball, I just buy the fees by going in with a very low fee, or are they actually doing something different?
And just to give the students an idea of cost, I'm not asking you to reveal your pricing, don't worry. But just, I don't think the students will actually understand what kind of fees and how much the fees are when going to a chartered accountant. Is it possible you could give them an indication, please?
Yeah, certainly. Well, the way we and pretty well every firm of accountants works is you have a charge out rate for every member of staff, so at different levels. So your charge out rate, say a junior, someone training, might be charged out at £20 an hour, and then it goes up with seniority to partners, which locally could be anything from £150 to £200, whereas in the big cities it'd be £500 or £600 an hour. But a lot of pressure has come on recently to quote fees. It always used to be on a time basis, but nowadays the pressure is to quote for the job. So we would quote to do a set of annual accounts or to do a tax return. Accounts would depend on the size of the company we're working with. So if it was a small company, they might be paying something like just under £2,000 a year for their accounts, whereas a company with a several £1 million turnover is probably going to be paying £20,000 a year. That's so. Whereas an individual, some of the smallest work we do, an individual, perhaps a pensioner with a tax return, might be about £200, that sort of thing. So there's a big range of services and a big range of fees.
Okie doke. I hope that helps you, Year 10, understanding what this is. So with all the things we've talked about so far, we've gone into some nice conversation about the competitors. What do you use to compare yourself with your competitors? Is there a particular business performance measure that you use that's you and that's your competitors?
It's very difficult to compare ourselves directly in financial terms with our immediate competitors because there's very little information in the public domain. But what we do is we're a member of a countrywide group, which is a group of accountants, so similar sizes to ourselves, but in different parts of the country. And because we're not direct competitors, we're willing to share our financial information with each other, and they will draw up, the charter group will draw up a set of statistics each year so that we can see and we can compare our margins, our gross profits, our average fee income, our number of clients, our charge out rates, amount the directors or partners earn, and we can compare ourselves with similar types of firms, which we can't do with our immediate competitors because Whittingham Riddell down the road in Shrewsbury won't want me to know what they're making each year, and I don't want them to know what I'm making each year, but I don't mind telling someone in Herefordshire or Gloucestershire because we're not. So that's quite useful to check where you stand within the industry.
Right.
And our professional body also produces some statistics which equally we can tap into to sort of look at what the profession in general is doing.
Well, could I ask you just to explain what the professional body is, because this is it's all new, and I've just got my colleague behind me. I might actually just bring this in now. We really think we've got a couple of students in our other business class who are interested in chartered accountancy. Yeah. So I think what we might do is we might share the video with them as well. If you could explain what that is, because we can then dive off a little bit into careers conversation, which you and I talk about anyway. Just so if you wouldn't mind enlightening the students, please.
Yeah, sure. Well, to be the term accountant isn't. Almost anyone could call themselves an accountant, but what we call a proper accountant would be someone who's professionally qualified. I'm a chartered accountant and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, which is a horrible mouthful, so we call it the ICAEW. And that professional body sets the standards by which we work and our professional ethics. So if someone's a member of a body like that, you can be fairly reassured that they're going to do things in the right way, not get you into trouble. They'll be up to date, and they'll be a respectable professional. It's a bit like in other professions, solicitors who belong to the Law Society, chartered surveyor. Some estate agents might be chartered surveyors, and they belong to a body. Local builders, you might see things on television like Trusted Trader. There's lots of different industries have different bodies which might sort of say these are the good guys, and so you've got some trust there.
No, that's brilliant, thank you. Would you ever change your pricing because of what your competitors are doing?
Not as a knee-jerk reaction. If we suddenly got the feeling that we were very out of kilter, it would obviously make us sit back and look at it and think, why, what's happened. So every now and again you do have to have a rethink. In recent years we've probably had to look a lot at some of the work that now is done much more work can be done on the computer. So whereas when I started training, people would bring a bag full of invoices and bits of paper, now they send in a memory key or a disk, or just email me a link to their software. So you have to change the way you price things, because obviously things can be speeded up and done more efficiently by computer. So you do, when you get big changes like that, you have to relook at it. But often when you're looking at your competitors, they're actually providing a slightly different service. So it's more then to market, to say the way we do it is better, and try and persuade people that our way is the best.
I think the next question might be involved in the one we've just been discussing, because the next question is, what do you do when an area of your service isn't selling very well? But is that what you're looking at in terms of you don't, because you're such a whole package, a whole service? I'm not quite sure how can we address that one.
Well, I suppose it can be. There can be times perhaps someone will say to someone, well, we think we could help you with your bookkeeping, and they say, oh no, it costs too much, I'll do it myself. So they don't want to take up that service. You can then work with them and point out all the errors they've made in a nice way, and how much time it's taken you to put it right, and the fact that if you did the bookkeeping for them, they'd save what they have to pay for that service in not paying it at the other end of the job. So you try to sort of see what's going wrong, what is it that they don't, or is it something they don't like, or perhaps with some people it's been a bit of being scared of technology. When things have changed, we say, well, we can do this for you because you've now got to do it digitally, and they keep putting it off, but until the very last minute, just because they don't. Not necessarily, scared is probably the wrong word. Some people just don't like being pulled into the fact that so much is now digital, and I can understand their concerns up to a point. We all have to be careful about how we use all this technology these days, don't we? I'm sure your clients are well aware.
Yeah, we often say that. I don't think many students actually believe the fact that employers look at internet profiles, but that's a different conversation.
Yes. Right.
Next question we've got, when we talk about customer needs, because it's not so much sort of that this is the service that you provide, when we're talking about actual needs, because they need, how do you believe that you fulfill your customers' needs?
Well, the first level is the simple side, which is what they need to do legally. So every business has to produce annual accounts. They have to complete a tax return. They have to pay their taxes and so forth. So at the very basic level, what we call compliance work is all the work that they need to have done or do themselves to comply with the law. So obviously our services will help them meet those needs, those requirements. When you go into the higher level of services, then it's a matter of, again, talking with the client to understand what their aims are, what their objectives are. And from that, you might then be able to say, oh, we could help you get there by doing X, Y, Z. For example, I had a client who was very concerned because their landlord, who owned the building they operated from, was talking about selling. And they said, well, we don't want to have to move. You know, a new landlord might not keep us on as a tenant. And moving a factory or factory and warehouse could be expensive. So we sat back. I thought, well, what do you want to do? And they said, well, we'd like to buy it ourselves if we could. And so that conversation led us into doing some work with them. Could they afford it? How to raise funds, the way to go through it, and the pros and cons of doing it. And in the end, they bought the factory and warehouse from their landlord and are now successfully carrying on. So it's those conversations to.
Yeah, I was going to say that then obviously links back to your earlier comment when we were talking about that individual one-to-one chat that you do. So it's very much focusing around that.
Yeah, it's very much finding out what people want to do. You know, is someone looking to retire early, or do some people want to carry on? They're perfectly fit and healthy and they want to keep running the business. So there's no point talking to them about retirement planning. But if you're talking to them and find out they do want to retire, or do they want their children to take over, or do they want to sell it? And depending on what they want and what they're trying to achieve in life, that will lead you to perhaps offer a service that may benefit them. There's no point offering them a service that's for no benefit, because they'll soon get cheesed off with you.
No, that's right. So how do you keep up to date with how changing customer needs?
Some of it will be keeping up to date with changes to laws and regulations. So in one sense, we're advising them that things are changing and they will need to do things differently. And can we help them meet those changes? A lot of things that have happened in the last 6 months with all the support during COVID. Businesses have been able to claim grants, apply for grants. So we've made it an important thing to keep the communications going, emails, newsletters to clients saying, this is what's happening. Don't forget, we can help you with this bit, or this bit you're going to have to do yourself because it's the way the government have set it up. And, you know, ongoing year to year, we keep an eye on that. We also look at just changes in the marketplace, information from our professional body, new innovations in software. You know, we've got some people who focus more on the IT side, and so they'll alert us to advances there that, again, we can alert our clients to. Okay.
And our last question, last question I've got, I will be throwing it out to the students in a minute. So there's a fair warning, year 10s. Is there anything you would like to do, but maybe don't have time to, which would help keep track of your competitors or keep track of changing customer needs? So it's a bit more of a wish list we're looking at now.
Yeah, I think what we quite like doing is to do networking with people like bankers and solicitors and other professionals, because then they remember us and will recommend us to their clients, which will help us keep building up clients. But it can be very time consuming. And it's something we like doing, but we can't always do because, you know, it's a bit of a luxury. I mean, some people will do it on the golf course. Other times you have nice things like arranging meals and wine tastings. But yeah, a bit of a luxury, but very nice to do when you can. Because we're very much a trusted person with our clients, I think sometimes you would like to be able to fit in the time to have what we call, it sounds a bit silly, but you know, a coffee and a chat, rather than seeing them just for them to pay you for something, just to give them some free time to be able to say, oh, hi, I was thinking about you, how are you doing? Or I was just, you know, round the corner, can I pop in for a coffee and just see how business is going? And for them to know that they're not being charged for it, to have the time to do that so that they know you're thinking of them, and you're not just there to want to charge them for every meeting, you know. So if you can put in some nice friendly ones in amongst the rest, that'd be nice to do more of that.
No, that sounds fab. Sounds, I can imagine that as well. Well, my last, more a bit of a request really. I appreciate your current data is something that you wouldn't want to share, but if there's any old questionnaires you've got or old surveys, could we possibly see them so we can quote them in coursework for students?
Yeah,
So,
I could. I'm sure I can, and I could even do sort of current ones and redact anything that's. I think they're fairly anonymous as it is. It's only a matter of redacting a customer's name, so they'll certainly let you have something like that.
Well, thanks, Helen. Right, I'm going to open it up to year 10s now. So year 10s, any questions? And considering we are 13 or 14 of you at the moment, I'd like a yes or a no from you for a question. Here we go. I've got some. AJ said no. Thank you, AJ. Elisa said no. You know, okay, let me change it. No, thank you. And it was lovely listening to you, would be a nice reply. We've got Holly's fine, Connor's fine. And we've got a few more typing at the moment. While you're listening, year 10, if anybody can mention to Jaden, he's had a bit of a Wi-Fi problem. Can you just let him know it's been recorded? Right. Oh, thank you, AJ. AJ said it was nice hearing from you. Rhiannon said thank you, but no questions. Miss Brown said thank you. It was nice listening as well. You were going to join in, Miss. Just to give the kids some credit for some of their replies, I'm just going to read out. Holly saying thanks for your time. I've got 2 more typing now. I'm going to hold on. It looks like there's no questions, but I'm just going to read them out to you. Khadija says thank you, no questions. Kai says thank you. I've got Sabra and Khadija still typing. Sabra says thank you for your time, no questions. Do you know what though, year 10, this is all being recorded, so that's why I'm reading out your names. So I think that's it, Helen. Thank you ever so much for the time. If you're able to send that info, that'd be amazing.
I shall send you that info, and if any questions do crop up from any of your students, you can always, you know, whiz it over to me. I'm more than happy to follow something up afterwards if something comes to their minds. Absolutely.
And year 10, just so that you know as well, when we've got our careers festival from the 9th of November onward, Helen is actually going to be one of the speakers. So if you want to find out about getting into chartered accountancy, Helen's the person. Helen's the one to talk to and go from there. So you've met the right person. You can come back and go, hi.
Yes.
All right, then. Well, thank you very much. We'll leave the call now then. Is that
all right? Thank you. Okay. Cheers. Bye, everyone. Cheerio. Bye.